some authority that he used to do that.
Yes, sir. The recording machine is broken, but we're ready when you are. All right. So you can bring that up and okay.
I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Caroline County Planning Commission for April 24th, 2025 to order. I'll invite everyone to join me for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, followed by an invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let us pray. Most holy and glorious Lord God, we thank you for the opportunity to come here tonight to serve Caroline County, to serve its citizens who are our friends and neighbors. We ask that you keep us in mind to be ever respectful of everyone's opinions and to remember that we are friends and neighbors. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, commissioners, first order of business will be the approval of the minutes from our February and March meetings. Has anyone had, or has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes? And if so, are there any additions or corrections?
Mr. Chairman, I didn't see any corrections, but I move that the February 27, 2025 minutes be accepted as written.
Motion by Mr. Young to approve the minutes as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Young, seconded by Mr. Williams. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Motion carries. Regarding the March 27th, 2025 minutes, are there any additions or corrections? Hearing none, is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we accept the March 27, 2025 meeting minutes as they are proposed.
Motion by Mr. Young. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Young, seconded by Mr. Williams. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Motion carries. Ladies and gentlemen, before we proceed further, I would like to go through our introductions. To my far left is Mr. Steve Rollins, who represents Reedy Church. To my left is Dr. Carol Horton, representing the Port Royal District. My name is Bob Schwartz. I am the chairman representing Bowling Green. To my immediate right is our vice chair, Mr. Richard Williams, representing Western Caroline. To his right is Mr. J.D. Young, representing the Mattaponi District. And I would like to introduce and welcome our newest member to the commission, representing Madison District, Mr. Lee Tingler. Welcome, Mr. Tingler, and we hope and pray that you come back for a second meeting.
Thank you, sir.
I'm sorry, I had that backwards.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, J.D. Young representing Reedy Church.
I'm Mattaponi.
And hey, I'm dyslexic. Give me a break. Okay. Unfinished business. SPEX 08-2024. Wildlife Rescue League Board of Directors owner applicant. Mr. Pennington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. The first item on our unfinished business tonight is Wildlife Rescue League SPEX 08-2024. Planning Commission held a public hearing for this request on February 27th, 2025. Concerns were raised by citizens regarding flooding of the property in Edge Hill Academy Road, the number of animals that would be cared for at the facility, and the location of outdoor enclosures for wildlife and potential for wildlife escaping. The Planning Commission attended site visits to the property in March of 2025. The applicant has provided a new GDP and narrative for the project, which notes the existing structure will not be demolished but may be expanded to a maximum of 432 square feet. The property has a recorded conservation easement associated with the property that allows the existing structure to be a maximum of 2,000 square feet. And the current structure is 1,568 square feet. The existing structure will be upgraded with new flooring and non-load bearing walls to split the existing rooms into smaller rooms to utilize for the animals kept inside the facility. The GDP has been updated to show potential outdoor caging areas for wildlife around the existing structure and at the education facility to be constructed during Phase 2. These potential caging areas are highlighted in yellow on your screen. Potential caging areas shown on the GDP meet the required rural preservation setback from Edge Hill Academy Road. The applicant has also provided examples of the cages that are being utilized. And VDOT has provided information regarding the flooding of Edge Hill Academy Road and found 3 documented incidents between 2020 and 2025. Edge Hill Academy Road was closed due to flooding in January of 2024, April of 2024, and February of 2025. VDOT stated that if there were more occurrences than the 3 noted, that the Traffic Operations Center was not notified. The applicant expects between 5 and 10 trips per day to the facility. The applicant anticipates that at full operation, the facility will rehabilitate between 300 and 500 animals per year. The facility will attempt to have animals healthy enough to release as quickly as possible as to not stress the animal. The applicant notes that this approximates to 1.5 animals admitted and released per day. The applicant also has updated the narrative to clarify that if an employee will reside in the facility, that an employee will not reside in the facility. According to the applicant, living quarters will be made available. However, there's no requirement that a staff member will live on site. Should an employee not reside at the property, the structure will need to be upgraded through building permits to a commercial structure. Staff suggested conditions remain the same with a couple changes. Should the outdoor cages be utilized as requested by the applicant, condition 6 will need to be stricken. And the staff is also suggesting a condition that the project be constructed with substantial conformance to the GDP. And this concludes the presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Yes, sir. Mr. Pennington, if you would go back to that last slide, please. Item 7. I realize DWR requires or regulates a multitude of ways to dispose of deceased animals, whether they're euthanized or should expire on premises. I realize we cannot lessen the regulations by DWR. However, we can make them more restrictive. And I think that it would be in everyone's best interest to strike according to DWR regulations and make it strictly by cremation, as we discussed when we did our site visit. That's going to alleviate some of the negativity that we had when we held the public hearing on it.
Yes, and after checking with the Public Utilities Department, our landfill will not accept deceased animal carcasses except for deer carcasses during hunting season only. So a euthanized animal would not be accepted at the landfill. So they would have to find another landfill or do the cremation like you said. They would not be able to dispose of the body at a landfill in Caroline County.
I think it would behoove all of us if that language were inserted, and I hate to say it, but make it more restrictive of how we dispose of the carcasses. So that was all that I had on that, sir.
Well, I mean, did you find out how they were disposed of at the other wildlife centers?
I do not, but based upon the comments that we had, I want to dispel some of the concerns, shall we say?
Mhm.
And I think that's an appropriate way to do it, unless somebody else has a
Well, we
different
could say
opinion.
they have to be cremated or disposed of outside of Caroline County. There would be 2 options. Because they can't be disposed of inside Caroline County anyway.
That's correct.
All right, and we could say they cannot be buried in Caroline County is what you're trying to say, correct?
Absolutely.
If
Yeah.
they're euthanized.
And I have, well, euthanize, what do we do with an animal that unfortunately dies while going through rehab?
Yeah, maybe we'll check with the rehabbers here and see how they do at the other facilities.
And I don't know, maybe Mrs. Axelrod would be able to shed some light on that as well. So for the time being, let's see if we can get some more information on that this evening. And before we proceed any further with a vote, we can address those concerns and see if we can't get this forwarded on this evening.
Yeah.
Any commissioner have any further questions or concerns?
I noticed that it's in a flood zone. What flood zone is it in? And the building said that it had been raised, and it does look like it had been raised, but not flood proofed.
So that is the floodplain that's shown on your screen in purple. The house sits right around there. The northern part of the property up here is outside of the floodplain. That's where the Phase 2 Education Center is planned to be built. It does seem as though the house was raised. There was a note in the building file from the previous meeting that there was a violation, and it was unclear on the follow-up from back at that time as to what was done with the house. But after speaking with the building official, it seems that it was raised and is above base flood elevation.
And can you show us on the map where the flooding occurred the last 3 years?
So that's just a picture of the road. It's not where it flooded, but that's where the water is very close to the
It floods
bridge.
to the
And so-
south of the property.
Yes, this is to the south of the property, looking towards the Wildlife Rescue League property. VDOT did not provide the information exactly with where it flooded, but this is a picture of the road, and the area that you're looking towards is a swampy wetland type area.
And when we did our site visit, we did not travel this particular bridge.
Right, we could not at that time because the train tracks on Page Road were closed, and so the shortest route to the property was on Stonewall Jackson Road. So we did not come down this way when we did the site visit.
But I've been on the bridge several times. Yeah.
We took it wrong.
Commissioners, any further? All right, Mr. Pennington, it looks like that's it. Maybe Ms. Axelrod will be, or someone from the organization can help us out with the cremation or disposal of any animals.
Hi. Yes, we had talked about hiring cremation services, looking at individual veterinary offices that might also use cremation services and paying them. I think Blue Ridge was using a county facility, and then it broke down, and so they no longer have the use of that. And they currently contract with a veterinary office, I believe, who does cremation. So that would be our favored method of disposal. Or otherwise, if there was an agreement that we could make with a landfill outside of Caroline County, since Caroline doesn't allow that, we would be amenable to that as well.
All right, at some of your other facilities or facilities that you are aware of, that may not be able to bury the carcasses on their own property, are you familiar with any place that will allow you to bury the bodies?
I mean, it's permitted in certain jurisdictions as long as you're burying 6 feet under. But I think most of the in-home wildlife rehabilitators also dispose of animals that have deceased at their own veterinarian practice.
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand the last half.
I'm sorry, I think most of the in-home rehabilitation facilities, the private individual rehab facilities, also use their own private veterinarian's office to dispose of the animals that decease at their property. I think it's very rare that you're going to find somebody who wants to bury wildlife continuously on any property.
I was a bit surprised that that issue came up from one of our citizens during the public hearing by virtue of the simple fact that if you drive down any country road, you're going to see a squirrel, rabbit, possum, raccoon, or something, or deer lying on the side of the road. So, you know, the concern for the fluids getting into the groundwater, well, it's already there. But, I'm just trying to dispel some of the concerns that the citizenry voiced.
Right. We have found deceased animals on that property during walks before. So you're right, they're out there. But we have no issue with contracting with somebody for cremation services. And I think that's the favored method.
Yeah, I just don't want to put a monetary burden on your organization if it's another way to do it. So would cremation being put in as one of the conditions cause any difficulty for the organization?
I think if we were permitted to cremate or dispose of animals outside of the county, that would not present a hardship.
Well, if you're able to do that, then I think the problem is resolved. So it's either cremation or disposal outside of Caroline County.
That would be fine.
Okay. Commissioners, you have any further questions or comments for Ms. Axelrod?
I had maybe one or two. So the pictures of the cages that are going to be used. So do you have I see one of them was completely open, looked like with no top, and then some with top. So in the wintertime, what do you use, or how do you go about, where do you put those animals that are rehabbing during the winter?
Outside?
I mean, you said you couldn't keep them inside the house, so you had to have them outside. So so those would be used winter and summer?
What the animals that, they will graduate. They will start off sick and injured, and little baby animals will start off inside the property, inside the house. As they get older, we want to introduce them to a more natural environment. So get them outside into cages to let them climb, let them do things that they would do out in nature. And eventually they would be released, ideally before winter. So animals that have to winter over, there are things that you can purchase inside, like little, the igloo that you would use for a dog if you were keeping a dog outside stuffed with hay. You could do something similar to that if you had animals that you had to winter over outside. Your exhibit animals that winter outside would have secure housing within the cages to keep them comfortable in the winter. But ideally, you're minimizing what you winter over. And if you winter over, any reptile would have to winter over indoors and not outdoors.
And I know at the last meeting we had someone in the audience that had a concern about the clash of the two, that being hunting dogs and those animals that are out there in the cages. I mean, I did get a letter from a lady from Blue Ridge Wildlife Center, and according to her, she doesn't have any record of those two things clashing. So you don't have a concern with that either, as far as during hunting season that you have a wild animal out in the cage and hunting dogs come up to the cage and disturb them or cause them to get erratic. You don't have a concern with that. I was just wondering, would that be a need to put those cages within a fence? I know you're gonna put a fence on phase two. When you do phase two, I understand, I read that the fence was gonna go there, but I was just wondering, would that be a concern? I understand that's a high hunting area down in that area.
I think it would be difficult to find any rural area in Virginia that didn't support a lot of hunting in the surrounding areas. I know in other wildlife centers have the same issues. I mean, there are certain controls and conditions that hunters also have to abide by. We know that hunters are not supposed to intentionally release dogs on properties without permission. However, we also know that dogs are hard to control, and once you let them loose, there's the potential that they'll come onto the property. We intend to set them back very far, even potentially farther than the required setback, to keep them as out of sight as possible. I think requiring us, even at phase two, to entirely fence in an entire area would present a financial burden that I don't know should be required.
Okay. And my last question. So the lady also in her letter that she sent me, she said that a lot of times their staff go out in the community to assist. So is that done at all facilities? Now, being you won't have someone on, so they disperse them from, or just give someone a phone call and they go out in the community in this area and help assist with an issue with injured wildlife or whatever. Do you guys would be doing that also?
I think it depends on the county. I know in Clark County, they don't have a very strong wildlife services at their sheltering division, whereas maybe Fairfax County, they're very supportive of wildlife and have a very large presence of animal control officers, animal protection police. Our volunteers do go out as good Samaritans and help citizens that have found injured animals that are hard to catch. We have volunteers that have gone out on waterways in kayaks to help trap water birds and other waterfowl that are entangled in fishing line. We've had people climb up into trees to rescue squirrels. So we will be providing those services to Caroline County as we do in all of the other counties that we service.
Okay. All right.
Anyone else?
I would just like to say, it's in my district, and I did get all positive comments about it, and I did get 5 letters in favor of it. So, I mean, as we encroach on the wildlife, I said this at the last meeting too, we need some help and assistance of how to live with wildlife. And they provide services, volunteer services to the county. And, you know, as they grow, there's going to be more and more education, especially for the generation growing up right now, because them in particular are going to have to learn how to live with wildlife. I mean, we're seeing more and more wildlife in our yards because they don't have anywhere else to go. So I think it's an asset to the county.
Dr. Horton, I would agree with you. I also have received 5 emails, all in favor of this facility, and it's something Caroline can use and will be a benefit with an extremely low impact on the surrounding community in that area, because I think the nearest house is almost a half mile away. There is little traffic on that road to begin with, and the small amount of traffic that this facility is going to generate you would have to have someone standing across the road in the woods counting vehicles to know that they're there. So I too am in favor of this going forward. If nothing else, Thank you, Ms. Axelrod. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Pennington, if you would see that, that condition is altered to, cremation only or disposal outside of Caroline County, I think we've got our bases covered.
You'll have to, you'll have to state that during your motion. So if you want to change, you can accept the conditions as presented, or ask to strike number 6, add number 17, and adjust number 7. You'll have to do that during your motion.
Understood. Thank you, sir. Just leave that up so that we'll get the verbiage correct. Okay. Commissioners, any further discussion? If not, is there a motion?
I would like to make a motion.
Dr. Horton.
Whereas special exception request 08-2025 appears to be generally consistent with the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan and future land use map, and whereas public necessity, convenience, general welfare, and general zoning practices warrant the approval of this request, I recommend that SPEX 08-2025 for the Wildlife Rescue League be forwarded to the Board of Supervisors, striking condition number 6, adding condition number 17, and the alteration, the bodies of the deceased animals shall be either cremated or disposed of outside of Caroline County. Did I cover it all? And I recommend this to be a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors with a recommendation for approval.
And I'd like to second that motion. There being a motion and a second, is there any further discussion amongst the commissioners? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Motion carries. This will be forwarded to the Board of Supervisors with a recommendation of approval. Thank you, commissioners. And I just lost my cheat sheet. Dr. Horton, you take my cheat sheet.
Maybe. Is that it? You're welcome. Good luck. So, what's on it?
The agenda and everything else. I just had it.
Well, you can look at mine.
Okay.
Yes, here it is. There's 2 of them stuck together. No, wait.
No, never mind. We're back on track. All right, public hearings. Mr. Pennington, do you wish to read the protocol or shall I?
I've got it, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, my friend.
The purpose of a public hearing is for the Caroline County Planning Commission to listen carefully to the verbal expression, position, and opinion from the citizens of Caroline County. Public hearings are not question and answer sessions or debates, and all statements should be addressed to the chair. When members of the public offer comment, they need to clearly state their name and voting district prior to making their comments. Applicants or representatives of the applicant will be allowed 15 minutes to introduce information regarding the matter advertised for public hearing. All comments are to be pertinent to the issue being considered. Persons speaking at public hearings are respectfully requested to keep comments brief, not to exceed 3 minutes, and to address only those issues pertinent to the matters advertised for public hearing. After the public hearing has been closed, the applicant or representatives of the applicant will be allowed 10 minutes to address any issues identified by the public.
Thank you, sir. While you're standing there, SPEX 04-2025, Flagstop Car Wash.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. First public hearing tonight, SPEX 04-2025 for Flagstop Car Wash. The applicant is requesting approval of a special exception permit for automated vehicle wash pursuant to Article 11, Division 4, Section 2.1 of the Caroline County Zoning Ordinance. The subject parcel is located on the south side of Ladysmith Road and is currently under development as the Ladysmith Crossing Shopping Center. The site of the proposed vehicle wash is within the shopping center area to be developed and is bounded on the west side by 1 acre of vacant PSC zoned land that has an approved site plan for construction of a 4-tenant unit structure to be occupied by Dunkin' Donuts. The site is bounded on the east and south by approximately 20 acres of vacant unsubdivided land within the PSC zoned area to be developed as Ladysmith Crossing Shopping Center. To the east of Ladysmith Crossing is one parcel, currently under site plan review for O'Reilly's Auto Parts. Directly across Ladysmith Road to the north is existing Ladysmith Sheets, a vacant parcel with an approved site plan for Wendy's, and a vacant parcel with a site plan approved for Arby's. The parcel will be accessed via a right-in, right-out entrance from Ladysmith Road and access drive to the south of the parcel with a connection to New Green Road. Both access points are shown on the approved infrastructure plan for Ladysmith Crossing, and the Google Earth image shows that both access points are currently installed. The applicant is requesting to utilize the subject property for automated vehicle wash. The general development plan depicts a 3,200 square foot single tunnel car wash. The vehicle entrance into the wash tunnel is on the north end of the building with cars moving through towards the south side of the parcel. There are 2 pay stations located on the north side of the parcel with a landscape buffer between the pay stations and the shared use path along Ladysmith Road. After exiting the automated vehicle wash tunnel, vehicles will have the option to exit the site or proceed to vacuum stations provided within the site interior. Each vacuum station will have a designated parking space as required by the zoning ordinance. The site will have an attendant at all times during operation in accordance with the ordinance requirement. The application meets the standards for automated vehicle wash set forth in Article 2 of the Caroline County zoning ordinance. The site has also been designed in accordance with the Highway Corridor Overlay District standards. The 2030 Comprehensive Plan designates this area as regional business within the Ladysmith Community Plan. Regional business, as described in the Comprehensive Plan, would be a district that structures may exceed 100,000 square feet. Regulations should encourage planned commercial centers with carefully organized buildings, service areas, parking areas, and landscaped areas. Such districts are intended for strategic locations in relation to population centers and transportation networks where adequate public facilities are established. The GDP for this special exception proposal shows a structure of 3,200 square feet located within a planned shopping center. The parcel is accessed via service drives and will provide landscaping in accordance with the Caroline County zoning ordinance. Public utilities are available to the site. An automated vehicle wash is a permitted use within the PSC zoning district with approval of a special exception permit, and this use is consistent with the comprehensive plan. Agency comments that were provided have been addressed via the second submission of the GDP. Remaining comments from Public Utilities, VDOT, and the Virginia Department of Health would be addressed at the time of site plan. Staff offers the following conditions for the Planning Commission to consider if there's a recommendation of approval. The 2 which shall be recorded within 30 days of receipt. Signage restricting overnight parking shall be placed within the parking area, and the hours of operation shall be limited to 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And this concludes the presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Commissioners, any questions at this time of Mr. Pennington?
Mr. Pennington, do we know when New Green Road is going to be started by chance?
So the portion of New Green Road here is built to the access road and will be continued as the planned shopping center develops towards the southern boundary line. New Green Road on the north side of Ladysmith Road has been constructed to the rear of the Sheets parcel, and there's currently a by right application on the parcel behind that would extend it over to one parcel away from the Ladysmith Industrial Park. Eventually that road will get to the Ladysmith Industrial Park and meet Center Drive, and then would exit on Route 1 next to the Tractor Supply.
Mr. Pennington, so 'cause I was having a problem trying to visualize this from what I had today. Well, you can go back to the other one you was on.
Yes, ma'am.
So to come into the car wash, if you was coming west from Route 1, you would turn at the light on Old Green Road to get to that access road to bring you around to the car wash. Is that correct?
If you were traveling west on Ladysmith Road, you'd have 2 options. You could turn at the light onto New Green Road and then make a left on the access road and then make another left to get into the entrance of the site. Or you can continue down Ladysmith Road and make a right in at the second access road, and that would put you on the road that the entrance to the site is on. If you were traveling east on Ladysmith Road, your only option would be to turn at the light onto New Green Road and then use the southern access road to get to the entrance. And So the GDP shows the entrance. Now my pointer is not working. So sorry, my pointer is not working, but the entrance is shown at the southeast corner of the site. And you can see the access road, which is a right in, right out onto Ladysmith Road on the right side of the picture. And so you could come in that way if you're traveling west on Ladysmith Road to come down to the entrance. Or as I said earlier, if you were traveling east or west, you could turn at the light and come down to the private access road at the bottom of the GDP and then turn left to get to the entrance that way.
So go back to the previous. Okay, so that, so coming from Route 1, I'm gonna turn right onto Green Road, then turn left on the access road to get into the car wash.
Yes, and so my clicker, my pointer's working now.
Okay.
So you can turn in this way on New Green Road, come down the access road, and then the entrance would be right here. Or you could come here and make a right in and come down to the entrance this way.
Okay.
If
So,
you're traveling east, you have to come this way.
so is there room, because I was looking at that cross thing today, so there's room for traffic to go out and in at that exit point?
Yes, this is a right in, right out, so traffic can come in or exit and make a right.
Are there any requirements for the applicant as far as lighting?
There's no requirements other than lighting except the HCOD restriction that requires for light to be at 0.5 foot candles or less at the property line. And so all light needs to be directed inward to the site.
So help me visual. So that path, walking path that they have coming down 639, where does that stop at?
So that walking path, it starts on the western border of the Ladysmith Crossing Shopping Center and runs all the way to the Exxon right there. And so that shared use path runs all the way across this property. And the comprehensive plan, as these parcels develop to the west, that shared use path would be continued to Route 1. And as parcels develop towards the east, the shared use path would ideally cross the bridge and continue to the east towards Madison Elementary School.
So what kind of safety mechanisms are there if someone was, let's say, was walking from the Wawa to go to the Exxon or go to the O'Reilly's? What safety mechanism is there for that, where that entrance exit is at?
So you can see the crosswalk that's in place. The entrance meets VDOT standards, and VDOT approved the plan that had the shared use path on it, the infrastructure plan for Ladysmith Crossing. And so this shared use path meets the distances, and the crosswalk meets all the safety measures required by VDOT.
And I think I read also there's no concern with water usage.
That's correct. I would defer to the applicant on water usage, but our understanding is that Flagstop recycles a percentage of their water.
Okay.
And Utilities has stated that they can serve the car wash.
Okay. That's all I have.
And I have one to add to that. You covered some of mine, but it's a 20-foot buffer. Is that what the buffer is between?
So
The buffer between Ladysmith landscaping, between the setback between Ladysmith Road and the map on the left there.
yes.
So
So
is there a requirement that needs to be grass or bushes or?
it would need to be bushes, canopy trees, and understory trees according to the HCOD ordinance.
Okay.
And there's figures that they have to abide by, 12-foot or 18-foot or 20-foot HCOD buffer.
And that's, the setback is 20 foot. On
So
my map here.
it's showing as 20 foot. The building setback is more than that.
But I just mean that little space there.
Yes, that would be 20 foot. And
Okay.
you also have the buffer between Ladysmith Road and the shared use path that's required by VDOT. And then another small grassed area to the property line. And then you'll have landscaping once you reach Flagstop's property.
Okay. Thank you.
The water that's not being recycled, what's happening with that?
I would have to defer to the applicant on their business practice.
Anything further at this time, commissioners? Okay, thank you, Mr. Pennington. We'd like to hear from the applicant.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name's Mike Rothermel. I am an attorney with the law firm of Spots Fane down in Richmond. Want to introduce who's here with me tonight to answer any questions you all may have. Jamie Nestor is president and CEO of Flagstop, and Steve King with Silver Core. He's with the civil engineering group that's designing the site. So between the three of us, we hope to answer any questions you have. I don't have much of a presentation. I think Craig does and the staff up here does a really thorough job. You know, I thank them for working with us, working through the application, working through their comments to resubmit the plan to address a number of the comments they have. You know, Flagstop is up to 24 locations in Virginia now, with 2 more in the immediate pipeline. They're excited about this particular location. Dropping my sheet here. You know, given the what appears to be the success of Sheetz and Wawa and some of the and the other surrounding commercial uses that have been approved, they feel like this is they're a great complementary use to the end users that are already in this site. In response to the question about the water being recycled, Jamie will say that anywhere between 50 and 80% of the water is recycled and reused. And then the, you know, any remaining water that is not reused goes to treatment facility, just like any other water. And that's true of their sites, you know, across Virginia. So, you know, with that, happy to answer any questions. If there's specific site planning questions, I can bring Steve up. But we think this is a really good location for this. I know this, the commission and the board just recently in the last 6-9 months put this use in as a special exception. And we're delighted to be the first one running it through, hopefully.
Commissioners, any questions at this point?
So you're aware that we don't have a reservoir in the county, correct? This is going to come from deep wells, the water for this. So how many cars per day are you anticipating? Or
Jamie, if you don't mind coming up. Yeah, and we did meet with all the departments within the county. We didn't get any reservations or concerns, but what's your anticipated vehicle count?
Yeah, our expectation is that this site will probably wash somewhere between 250 to 300 cars a day. Once we've peaked at capacity, of course, the first couple of years, it'll take, you know, some time to ramp up to those kind of numbers. During our first initial conversations with the county, the utility department did talk about the water coming from the ground wells and some of it being hard water, and let us know that we would definitely have to put the equipment in to soften the water and treat the water before we even use it to wash the cars and use spot-free water. But with our recycling system, we can get down to using about 10 to 20 cars, 10 to 20 gallons of water, of fresh water per vehicle. And in some of the smaller localities that we're already in, like in Powhatan, you know, that site's washing, in Powhatan, we're washing almost 500 cars a day, and we're not having any issues out there either. So.
What size is your reclamation tanks?
I think for this site, we have 2,000 gallon tank, we have 3 2,000 gallon tanks, so it holds 6,000 gallons.
Okay. I'm a little cloudy on if you said 50 to, what was that percentage again of
it's 50 to 80%. We say that because we don't always turn it all the way up to 80% just
Mhm.
because of quality issues. Obviously, the more fresh water we can use, the cleaner the car is going to get and the less chemicals we have to use. So there's a fine balancing act that once we actually get open and get started, we'll have to tweak, how much fresh compared to how much reclaim we can use to get the chemicals to foam right and obviously rinse off well so that the car will be a quality product when we put it out.
Okay, so everything goes to reclamation tank from your drain, and then you dispose what's the other 20%, if it's gonna be 80%? I mean, I'm
Yeah, there's
kind of trying to figure out, you have two drains, or how does this work?
yeah, the only thing that bypasses the reclaim is obviously the bathrooms.
Mhm,
So
yeah.
100% of the water will go into the reclaim tank, except for, I mean, there's some studies that say about 20% of the water that goes onto the car actually stays on the car and gets,
Sure.
dragged away with it. So 100% of the water that gets into the trench goes to the reclaim tanks, and we can reuse up to about 80% of that.
Okay. So when you reuse that, you're dispensing the other 20% into our system.
Correct. Correct.
Okay. And is that clean water, or is that, I mean, once you dispense it into our system and it's gone through your reclamation system, are you cleaning it before it comes to?
Yeah, it is going through the cyclonic separators.
Mhm.
It is going through the reclaim system, so it is a cleaner product than just, I mean, it is still gray water, but it's not,
Sure.
what just came off the car. It's at least gone through the system.
So primarily, most of the suds and chemicals will
Correct.
go through the filters and,
Yes.
okay, thank you.
Mr. Metzger, do you operate the flag stop on 301 in Hanover?
Yes, we do.
All right. I was just wondering what capacity, as far as the number of vehicles they're running per day.
On average, that site averages about 400 per day, assuming the sun's out, obviously. That's a good average day. That site has the capacity. I think the most we've ever done at that site there on Chamberlain is probably about 1,200 a day. So, in pollen season, we can really gear up and wash a lot of cars. But on average, it's doing about 300 to 400.
The reason I ask is they have a very high traffic volume in that area, a larger population. So, it's going to depend, I think, on the demographics of where you are. So, the chemicals that you use, the soaps and cleaning agents, they, as I understand from what you're saying, they will not get back into the system going into our water system or our,
Goes down to what, near Polecat Creek?
right, but that will be after it goes through our reclamation system, treatment center.
Facility.
Yeah.
I'm getting old. It went completely out of my head. But yes, our water treatment system, you're claiming all of that in your reclamation process before it goes to our treatment.
Correct.
Correct.
Now, we're not actually treating the water, so we're
Right.
not, taking it all the way down like your wastewater
Right.
system does.
Okay.
But it doesn't have, all the foams are out of it by then. All these products are designed to, it's actually come a long way, and I've been doing this for over 30 years now, actually working for Flagstop's the only job I've ever had. I started part-time in 1994 and just never left, still there. But some of these, and I'm not a chemist, so I can't explain it all, but a lot of these chemicals that we use now bind together with the solids, and while they're sitting in the tanks, its whole job is to get that solids dragged down to the bottom of the tank and start separating itself before it goes out to the wastewater system.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Metzger. That's all I have.
What do you do with those solids once they've settled in the tank?
There's a company that's actually, lucky for us, based out of the Richmond area called the Pit Crew, and they come out every 3 to 4 months and pump them out and haul it off.
So nothing that's going to hit our systems.
No.
This is something we certainly need here in the county.
I hope there's a lot of people that feel that way.
Indeed.
All right, Mr. Metzger, thank you very much. We're going to go ahead and conduct our public hearing,
Okay.
at which time you will have an opportunity to address any concerns. Public hearing for SPEX 04-2025 is now open. Is there anyone wishing to speak regarding this matter? Anyone wishing to speak regarding this issue? Third and final call, anyone wishing to speak regarding this matter? Seeing no one coming forward, the public hearing is now closed. Mr. Pennington, I think Dr. Horton does have a question or two.
So this is our first car wash, correct?
We currently have a car wash that is on Route 1 at the corner of Route 1 and Green Road across
I
from the
was thinking
Pendleton
there was-
subdivision. It's a bay wash, car wash,
Oh,
where
so it's
you,
different.
yeah, you put quarters in and get 2 or 3 minutes to spray your car down. This would be the first automated car wash in Caroline and the second total car wash in Caroline.
Okay. And, so our only treatment facility is still Polecat Creek area right
Yeah,
now?
right now.
Okay, that's all I had.
Is it-
Thank you.
Isn't there an automated one next to the Exxon in Carmel Church?
It is yes. Yeah, the Exxon has a one bay drive-through
Okay.
automated. Yes. And this is EPA regulated with, all of they get all the bells and whistles and all the approvals, make sure all of the stuff is done prior to occupancy.
Yes, and also if you look at the public utilities comment letter that's in your packet, they stated that all detergents and things need to be identified to them prior to final approval, and that no phosphate soaps will be allowed. So utilities is regulating what goes into the water and what comes out.
Commissioners, anything further? Any questions, Mr. Williams?
None.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Pennington. All right, commissioners, any discussion further on this matter? There being no further discussion, is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion where special exception request number SPEX-04-2025 Flagstaff Car Wash appears to be generally consistent with the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan and future land use map, and whereas the public necessity, convenience, general welfare, and good zoning practices warrants the approval of this request, I recommend that we move forward, approve this and move forward to the Board of Supervisors with recommendation of approval.
I second.
Motion by Mr. Rollins, seconded by Mr. Young. That is with the suggested conditions as attached. No, any further discussion by the commissioners? There being no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Motion carries. This will be forwarded to the Board of Supervisors with a recommendation of approval with the attached conditions. Thank you, gentlemen. All right. Text 06-2024. Mr. Robbins.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. For the record, I'm Brad Robinson with the County Planning Department. And before you this evening for a proposed text amendment to the zoning ordinance, which is identified as TXT 06-2024. And just to refresh your memory, we were before you for this proposed text amendment back in January, where this amendment was initiated by the Planning Commission. And as you should recall some of the history with this, planning staff has been working with the Board of Supervisors since last summer on evaluating Caroline County to consider incorporating civil penalties into the property maintenance and zoning codes as an additional tool of enforcement. So the public hearing tonight, the text that you have before you is to amend Article 20 of the zoning ordinance to incorporate civil penalties. And I'm going to try to walk you through some of the draft text very quickly. But if you look at the proposed text, you'll see the majority of it, all of the text in red is what is proposed and being added. And it may look overwhelming on initial review, but it's basically just outlining a schedule of fees for civil penalties and criminal penalties. If you see the proposed text, item A or section A would become devoted to civil penalties, and section B or item B would outline the provisions and fines for criminal penalties. Now, currently in the zoning ordinance, we have provisions for criminal penalties, and it just simply states that any person who violates any provisions of this zoning ordinance shall be guilty of a misdemeanor, and upon conviction thereof shall be subject to a fine not to exceed $250. That is the current provisions for criminal penalties that we have in the zoning code. Now, the Code of Virginia allows localities or gives power to localities to assess penalties, civil penalties, and criminal penalties, and it outlines what the initial fine can be, and then it allows what the fine or outlines what the fine is allowed to escalate to. So that's what this language is doing in Article 20. Rather than just having a base fine of $250, we're building in a system where the fines will escalate if we're not able to achieve compliance. So the Code of Virginia outlines that the initial summons can exceed $200, and we're proposing $200 in our code. Each additional summons, the Code of Virginia says that the localities can fine up to $500, and that is what we're proposing in our code. And then the maximum aggregate penalty over a period of time, the Code of Virginia says that that is not allowed to exceed $5,000. That is the same maximum we have put into this proposed ordinance. So just to make sure I'm being clear, we're utilizing all of the fines that the Code of Virginia says that we can utilize. Some localities, if you were to look at multiple localities, which we have done as part of this process, you'll find a variation of fines that localities are using. They're just not allowed to go above these maximums that the state has outlined. So we're not going above the maximum fine. Some localities start with a fine of low as $10. I've seen $50, I've seen $100. It's no set fine that localities are using. It's all based on what they've set up in their ordinance. So we are utilizing the maximum fines that the state has given us. And then just to move on to the criminal penalties, which is in section B, same proposal to utilize the maximum fines that the state allows localities to utilize. I will point out that our language for criminal penalties specifies that it's for violations of the zoning ordinance resulting in injury to a person or persons, or where civil penalties exceed $5,000. So again, the initial fine in the case of where a criminal penalty has been applied, the initial fine cannot exceed $1,000. That is what we have proposed in this language. If we're not able to achieve abatement, failure to abate after being convicted, the fine is $1,000, which we're proposing that is what we're allowed by state code. If the violation still is not abated during any succeeding 10-day period, then the fine can escalate to $1,500 by state code. That is what is proposed in this ordinance. And then lastly, a failure to abate the violation during any succeeding 10-day period, the maximum fine would allowed by state code is $2,000, and that is what we proposed in this code. So it's a system of escalation for both civil penalties and criminal penalties. And just in case, for your knowledge, the powers are granted to the localities for civil penalties in the Code of Virginia 15.2, 2209, and for criminal penalties, Code of Virginia 15.2, 2286. And that's basically going to conclude my presentation or information I have to provide to you tonight. I can attempt to answer questions at this time, and I will remind you that this is a public hearing.
Yes, sir. Thank you. This verbiage has been gone over by the county attorney and scrutinized
Yes,
to the
sir.
nth degree, I'm sure. So,
And I'll just add, if you compare the language that's proposed to the state code, you're going to find that it's pretty much verbatim.
all right, sir. We thank you very much. Any questions at this point?
I think I have a couple of questions. So other counties that you say, oh, they enforce similar to this. So how many of those, do you have any idea of how many of them actually go to court versus resolving them prior to court? Or are we going to have a lot of court cases with this?
I do not have that type of data. I will just say that some localities may have the tools in their ordinance, which is what we're doing, but as to how they're utilizing those tools, we'd have to reach out and get some additional information from them.
There's a little bit of vagueness in unmitigated grass, weeds, or other foreign growth that I would love to see better defined, because your weed is my yard of wildflowers, and is there an argument that goes back and forth for that?
So I believe you're referring to the description of the text amendment in the packet. I guess I need to touch on and just sort of clarify that when we started preparing this amendment, the intent was for it to be comprehensive and include some other articles of the zoning ordinance, which we're going to address issues such as inoperable motor vehicles, trash, garbage, unmitigated grass. We're going to bring some of those amendments back before you as a separate text amendment. So while the text amendment that's before you tonight was advertised comprehensively, we're not required to adopt everything that's described in that description. So tonight is only dealing with Article 20, the schedule for the civil penalties and the fines. So as to what the amendment will look like for the inoperable vehicles and unmitigated grass and junk and trash, you'll see that in a separate amendment at a future meeting, which we're planning for next month.
Okay, so the intent tonight is not to vote on those things. It's strictly Article 20.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And just to elaborate, your question is touching on an item that we have later on the agenda tonight, which is to initiate a motion for some of those other amendments.
So your enforcement is going to be no different than what it is currently. The only difference now would be the penalty itself, right?
Correct. As we've described it, it's an additional tool. We would have the ability to utilize either criminal penalties or civil penalties. Criminal penalties sometimes can be cumbersome or burdensome to staff to try to go through that process because we're at the mercy of the court system, whereas civil penalties allows us to assess fines more upfront rather than having to take it into the court system right away or try to get scheduled on a court docket. But we would have both tools available, so depending on the situation and the severity of it or the difficulty we're having achieving abatement and compliance, we would have the ability to utilize either or both.
Ladies and gentlemen, anything further? If not, we will open the public hearing. Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Public hearing for text amendment 06-2024 is now open. Is there anyone wishing to speak? Please come forward, state your name and your voting district.
Good evening, Chairman Schwartz, members of the Planning Commission. Mary Hodge. I live in the Woodford area of the Bowling Green District. And I hope I'm speaking appropriately tonight because my comments are about inoperable vehicles. And I'm just here to speak in favor of the fines assessed for those. I've been waiting for this public hearing because I've got a lot of concerns concerning unlicensed and inoperable vehicles. Where I live, there's nothing but farm fields. However, I have a neighbor that moved into a 2-acre parcel next door who's a Marine and is kind of a vehicle hoarder. It's an agricultural zone area. The front acre he keeps pristine, and the back half closest to my home, I've counted up to 20 vehicles parked, large, big enclosed trailers, flatbed trailers, trucks, old trucks, cars, Jeeps, tractors. There's even a yacht there now in the driveway. And I think there might have been a violation reported at one time because some of the vehicles disappeared, but now there's a lot hidden kind of behind other buildings and behind other vehicles. And then also the gentleman recently built a big, like 35 by 50 foot, 2-story metal garage just 5 feet from my property line. And I think apparently there was a building permit, but I never saw one posted. But there's still a big a dirt pile right next to my line. And I feel like a data center would be a better neighbor at this point because there would have been a greater setback and landscape buffering because all I hear from, is the frequent noise of diesel motors and mufflers reverberating and and they go into my house. I fought off a solar farm right near my home, but I wouldn't even be able to see it because of all the cars that are parked in my line of sight. And I also, this isn't on this zoning, but I also request that a limit should be placed on how many vehicles a military person can own, being exempt from personal property tax in the county. I feel like it's an abuse of the system. So my bottom line is just thank you for bringing this up, and I urge you to enforce the penalties. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hodge. Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Anyone else wishing to speak regarding this matter? And seeing no one coming forward, the public hearing is now closed. Commissioners, you have any further questions of Mr. Robinson?
I actually have a couple questions about farm vehicles. They're not required to be licensed if they're over a certain gross vehicle weight. They have some exceptions. How would that be regulated? Because they don't have to be licensed. One, tractors obviously don't get licenses, things along those lines.
So I'll try to answer this to the best of my ability, but right now in Article 15 of our zoning ordinance, we do have regulations that address the storage of inoperable vehicles. It doesn't distinguish whether it's a farm vehicle or not. It just states that the storage of more than one motor vehicle or trailer, which is wrecked, inoperable, or without current state inspection, it's required to be in an enclosed building or a space that is completely screened from view. So my understanding, if it has been licensed as a farm vehicle, then that would be considered current state inspection licensed.
But there's obviously, if it's never been tagged because it's a farm vehicle, it is exempt from this, is what it sounds like.
I don't believe so. If it's wrecked or inoperable, then no.
Okay.
So it doesn't matter whether it's farm or whatever. If it's not inoperable, if it's not operable, then it's going against the zone regulation.
Correct.
What I mean, what size these vehicles? Does it include like the four-wheelers and golf carts?
Let me see if we
'Cause,
define.
Four-wheelers and golf carts aren't often licensed.
Yeah. But neither are tractors, that's why I kind of ask.
Ms. Hodges' point, neither is that
Neither is what?
yacht that she mentioned. The boat, the yacht.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not finding where our code defines these terms, inoperable vehicle or
Yeah.
vehicle. So we would have to get some input from our legal counsel on
Yeah.
that. But
We probably need to, and you know, the yacht too. Of course, that's probably on a trailer.
Right. Can't make them put it in the water to verify it floats.
And to are sheds allowed within 5 feet of a neighbor?
Yes.
accessory
Okay.
structures, yes.
I thought it was a little bit further boundary than that, only 5 feet. Okay.
Correct. And let me tag back to the last question. The Code of Virginia does define terms like motor vehicle, what constitutes as a motor vehicle. So we would have to look to some of those definitions as how this county code would apply to those vehicles. In the case of example, a yacht, we would have to see how that's defined.
So say one vehicle can be outside of a garage or shed, but it, you know, if you have more than that, it has to be inside. So,
Furthermore, our code does specify that if you have more than 4 inoperable vehicles, that constitutes as a junkyard, which is not permitted. So someone would not be
Yeah.
able to have more than 4 inoperable vehicles on their property.
I mean, it is, when there's no shield around it, I mean, you know, trees or whatever, it is very unsightly, but it's also unsafe. I mean, it's the wildlife tends to go there, and you tend to have a lot of snakes in those areas, you know, and too many copperheads. Copperheads like to live in dens.
I think the intent and purpose of the statute is aimed at those who grossly violate our environmental quality. Without some bite, if you don't get into their pockets or have the ability to get into their pockets, you're not going to get their attention. An environmental officer, and I did it for a while when I was with the Pulaski Police Department, went around and found trash, inoperable vehicles, safety hazards, and so forth. And you go by and you politely talk with them and explain what the situation is. And they say, "You can kiss my grits. Ain't nothing you can do about it." Okay. So fortunately, there was something I could do about it, and that was issue them a summons. So if you do not have the capability or the ability to enforce something, you're going to wind up with a situation like Mrs. Hodge has. I don't think an environmental officer would go around and say, "Oh, the battery in your car is dead. It's inoperable. I'm going to give you a summons." I don't think that that's going to be the purpose of the enforcement in the statute. But it's going to be for the scofflaws like Mrs. Hodge is dealing with. The ones that think you can't touch them, watch this.
Batteries corroding all on the ground.
Exactly.
Who's going to be enforcing this?
We have a code compliance officer in the department who responds to complaints. So it will be our code compliance officer. And Mr. Chairman, if I may, Mr. Pennington was able to pull up the definition from state code for a motor vehicle, so I was just going to read that and share it with you all.
Yes, sir.
So the Code of Virginia defines a motor vehicle as, or it says, motor vehicle means a vehicle capable of self-propulsion, which is either one, required to be titled and licensed, and for which a license fee is required to be paid by its owner, or two, owned by or assigned to a motor vehicle manufacturer, distributor, or dealer licensed in the Commonwealth. For the purposes of this article, motor vehicle does not include moped as defined, and then it gives another code section.
Thank you for that clarification, sir. All right, commissioners, any further questions?
So the vehicles, only vehicles that can be licensed are considered, is what that said. Correct, Mr. Pennington? Well, you don't have to look it up. You don't have to look it up again.
That was correct. They're titled and licensed, and for which a license fee is required to be paid by its owner.
Okay.
So jumping back to the question about the farm vehicles,
Yeah.
I believe you have to have a license plate on a farm vehicle or farm tag.
Not over a certain gross vehicle weight. I believe it's 7,500 pounds right now. Anything under that amount, you do have to have a farm tag issued by DMV. Over that limit, you do not.
Okay.
But not for tractors.
No, you don't have to have for tractors, boats, ATVs, four-wheelers, golf
carts.
Some golf carts you do, because like Town of Bowling Green is a golf cart zone,
Right.
in which case there are license plates.
Oh,
for that.
okay.
Anything further, commissioners? All right, Mr. Robinson, you need a motion on this to get it forwarded?
Yes, sir.
All right. All right, I'd like to make a motion. Whereas the public necessity, convenience, general welfare, and good zoning practices warrants the approval of text amendment 06/2024, I recommend that
2025. No, 2024.
Yeah. Text Amendment 06/2024 be forwarded to the Board of Supervisors with a recommendation of approval.
Second.
Seconded by everyone.
Everyone.
Commissioners, any further discussion? There being no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Motion carries. Mr. Pennington, any and all matters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First item under any and all matters is the Virginia Certified Planning Commissioners Program. That program is coming up in August. Mr. Rollins and Mr. Tingler as new planning commissioners will have that coming up in August, and it's also always available to existing planning commissioners to refresh, anything old or new that has come up under the planning commissioner training. So it's just a notification that training is coming up in August. And, if you want to sign up or need to sign up, then you can, and you can talk to Lisa on any information that you might need for that.
Mr. Pennington, back in December or January, I went in to try to register, and they said the classes were full. So when I saw this was on the agenda, I went in this week. So I went on and did they had a thing where I could say, put me on standby. So I never heard from them, so I just lost track of it. So I went in the other day to register for, which one of them started today, which I knew I was too late for that one, but the one for August, they said it's already full. And I also had to put myself on a waiting list for that. So I don't know if an opening comes up, whether they would inform me, but based on right now, there's no classes open for this year.
Okay.
So is there another place other than a VCU that we can do this?
So we'll check into that for you,
Okay.
and we'll get that information to you, especially since you and Mr. Tingler need to attend these classes. We'll look into that, and we'll get information sent to your emails as soon as possible.
But it's Virginia Tech, right? And it's still Virginia Tech?
No, it's VCU now.
VCU now?
You wouldn't know if there is a charge if you want to take a refresher.
I think that the application fee, you still have to pay to take the refresher. But all that information is available on VCU's website. And again, with us having to look it up for Mr. Rollins on the classes being full, we will forward that information to all of you for the availability of classes, fees, applications, things like that.
All right, sir, thank you very much.
But the
Appreciate
county
it.
covers the fees, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think it's $750 now.
I don't think I did that, I think. But, well, mine's been a long time.
All right, item 6B, discussion and initiation of corresponding amendments to civil penalties. Mr. Robinson.
Okay, so good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. Mr. Tingler sort of touched on this item. When we first advertised the text amendment that you just heard, the intent was to do a comprehensive amendment that was going to include some other articles of the zoning ordinance. But our legal counsel, after reviewing the initiating motion that occurred in January, felt that that was very specific to civil penalties themselves. So we had been advised to go ahead and take forward the civil penalties amendment, which you just heard tonight, and we'll be bringing back other amendments to the zoning ordinance to address some other issues, such as mentioned earlier, inoperable vehicles, trash, garbage, unmitigated grass. That will be coming back before you in a separate and prepared as a separate text amendment. And just for some context of why we were bringing this before you, the Code of Virginia limits the ability of localities to be able to go after or pursue these types of violations in agricultural zoning or land that's zoned for an active farming operation. And that tends to be some of those areas in Caroline tend to be some of the areas where we have some issues. So we're seeking a way to incorporate some mechanism into the zoning ordinance, since we don't have the power under property maintenance codes. We're seeking an alternative in the zoning ordinance. So that's the purpose of bringing this back before you as a separate text amendment.
All right, so any questions by the commissioners at this point?
So you're going to address the farmland people too? That's what you're saying in this? Because my concern is, and I know we was talking about tractors and stuff on farms. If you got 5 tractors, and I mean farmers buy equipment a lot, and but if you got a farmer with 5 tractors sitting on his property and they got grass around them 5 foot tall, I don't think he should be exempted when I'm going to get forced to move my car to my yard if I got 5 foot of grass and it's just sitting, it's not operable. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it's fair. I think we need to make it fair with me, not the farmer, and the farmer having the same compliance to mm-hmm. what makes things look good in the community. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So.
Mr. Robinson, you mentioned about screening these vehicles. So they wouldn't have to move them. They would just have to put a privacy fence, something to just keep them out of public view. Is that what?
Currently, our code requires, yeah, that is correct. If you have up to 4, they have to be screened. Now, the code actually allows for 1 exposed vehicle, and then the other 3 have to be screened from view. Mm-hmm. We're proposing when we are prepare the text amendment and bring it back before you, we are proposing that all inoperable vehicles on your property, all 4, would need to be screened from view, no longer allowing 1 to be exposed.
So if they're in your backyard, it's okay, is what you're saying?
That would be correct.
But your neighbor that lives behind you could still see, but they're still in compliance, correct?
Well, it says screen from public view, so if a neighbor could see it, then that would not be in compliance.
Okay.
And our code actually speaks to screen by a wall, hedge, or fence.
Mm-hmm.
Does it specify the height of it?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, because so if somebody on the second floor looking over, they gonna give you calls all day long,
Mm,
looking over a fence or something of that nature.
mhm,
And we used to deal with that in law enforcement, but that's,
mhm.
yeah, we
Yes.
getting really into the weeds then, but. okay.
Correct.
Okay. So as long as they're behind a fence or in a storage building.
Enclosed in the building or screened by wall, hedge, or fence. And that's what our code currently requires. It's just that we allow one inoperable vehicle to be exposed, and then the other three are required to be screened from public view. So the amendment will require that all 4 inoperable vehicles on your property be screened.
All of this is predicated, however, on getting a complaint. The enforcement's not out there looking for this stuff.
That's correct. We respond complaint basis.
And that's the difference when I was doing it. I went out and looked for it. That's what they wanted me to do.
So if you all would like to see this text amendment move forward, then we've prepared a draft motion for you to initiate this text amendment. I believe that's just been distributed to you.
I thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
I move that the planning commission initiate the consideration of amendments to the zoning ordinance to address 1, the outdoor storage of inoperable motor vehicles, 2, the outdoor keeping of trash, garbage, and other similar substance, 3, unmitigated growth of grass, weeds, and other vegetation, 5, junkyards, 6, amendments related to enforcement to address the adoption of civil and criminal penalties, and 7, necessary housekeeping amendments and reference updates. The consideration of such amendments being required by public necessity, convenience, welfare, and good zoning practice.
Second. Ladies and gentlemen, there's been a motion and a second. Any further discussion? There being no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Motion carries. That concludes our business. Is there a motion to adjourn to the May 22nd,
So moved.
2025 moving?
Second.
Moved and seconded by everyone. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Motion carries. Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.